Thanks for joining me. There's an old saying, how do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. None of us knows the future. And in the Old Testament, in Proverbs 27 verse 1, it says, boast not thyself, or do not boast of tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. You don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the future is. We might have one idea and God has others. In the Gospels, Jesus tells a parable about a rich man, a rich fool. He was doing very well in his business and he was making so much that he didn't have any place to store all the crops that his field was yielding. So what he said to himself, well, I'll build bigger barns, and then when I've got enough, I'll say, I've got enough now, and I'll retire and take it easy. But Jesus called him, he said, you fool. He says, this night your soul is required of you, and those things which you've put aside, whose will there be? So is he who might be rich in this world, but is not rich in the eyes of God. This man, all he was thinking of was getting rich. He had one idea, but God had another. He had no idea that death was waiting for him just around the corner. We don't know what the future holds. God is in control. And in the Bible, even though we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and it's natural for human beings to be curious about the future, we're forbidden to seek guidance from astrology, mediums, the dead, wizards, witches, the occult, Leviticus 18, Leviticus chapter 20, verse 27, Deuteronomy 18, 10 to 13, and Isaiah chapter 47, verses 12 and 13, because we're not to put our hope in those things, although we're curious about the future, crystal balls and all that lot. No, we're to trust God, we're to put our hopes, we're to look to him for our future, because as the psalmist says, my times are in your hands. God knows the day of our birth and he knows the day of our death. I don't think I want to know the day of my death. I'll leave it in the hands of God. And that's why we say Lord willing or God willing. In Latin it's Deo volente. That's why sometimes you might see on a letter or on a memo written down DV is just short for Latin Deo volente. This is our attitude. We should say God willing, or if the Lord wills. This is from in the New Testament epistle to James in chapter 4 verses 13 to 16. It says, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanish away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So we say, God willing, Lord willing, we don't know what the future holds. God does. And that was the attitude of the Apostle Paul when he's on his travels. If the Lord wills, I'll do that. We see that in the book of Acts. And that should be our attitude today, because we don't know what the future holds for us. We could be here for decades, years, days, months, weeks, hours. None of us know. We all sadly hear of people who are cut off in their prime, very young, full of life, seemingly bright futures, but we don't know. God knows. That's why we say, God willing, the Lord wills, because he knows best. And that's why we should always be ready to meet our Maker, because none of us knows the day or the hour when we're going to die, or the Lord will return to judge the earth. And that's why Jesus came. He says, I came to give life, and life in all its abundance. We are to be right with God because we don't know when we're going to die and going to be judged by God. So we should always be ready. We should always live with an eye to God, seeking to please him. And when we make plans, because it's not prudent not to plan, because there's a saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. But when we plan, we should always say, God willing. Thanks for hearing me out. God bless.